It is such a joy to be back in India and to see all of you. Many of you are dear friends from many, many years, in fact, many lifetimes. When I first came to India, as almost everything in my spiritual life, it was with Swamiji. It was in 1974. And I remember at the time that I had to leave India after being here about 6 weeks, that it felt like I was leaving my homeland. I never, after that, felt that I was really meant to be an American. I was meant to be an Indian. But Master said that many Indian souls were born in Western bodies, and many Western souls were born in Indian bodies. I think they now work in the tech industry. But there was a divine purpose to it, because India and America were destined to come together, because America represented the Dwapara Yuga material efficiency, and India represented not Dwapara Yuga, not Kali Yuga, not Treta Yuga, not Satya Yuga, but cycle after cycle after cycle of time of the deepest spiritual energy. And those two countries especially are destined to help set a pattern, and Ananda communities are a model for that pattern. At any rate, we don't want to give a lecture tonight. Tonight is just friends sharing heart to heart. When I first met Swamiji, it was different, I think, than Master's meeting with Swamiji the first time. When Swamiji met Master the first time, he had read Autobiography of a Yogi, and he took the next bus essentially across the country of America, 4 days and 4 nights. And when he first met Master, there was this intense yearning in his heart. And that yearning was a yearning for God, and a yearning for the knowledge of realization, and the desire to share that with everyone. When I first met Swamiji, frankly, I was not as clear-minded as he was, nor as clear in my purpose. But I sometimes feel I was like a little kitten that was wandering around the room, and Divine Mother took pity on me and picked me up and placed me at the feet of Swamiji. So I went to his apartment one Sunday afternoon. I had read Autobiography of a Yogi, and we had gotten his address, this direct disciple of Master, from a friend, or really an acquaintance in a bookstore who knew of Swamiji. We got his address, my brother-in-law and I, and we went and knocked on his door, and he invited us in, introduced himself, and said, I'm working on a project, would you like to help? And I have said a few times before that I said yes immediately, not realizing that it was a 50 or 60 year project that I had signed up to help with. At any rate, that afternoon we went on this was in San Francisco, there's a beautiful park there, Golden Gate Park. We went, and he began talking with Master of his years with Master. He took along a guitar and he sang a couple of songs that he had written. He sang a bhajan or two. Because we were having a picnic, he talked a little bit about Master's teachings, of the qualities of the food that we were eating. And I was absolutely charmed and awestruck. The knowledge of Swamiji, the charisma, the spiritual greatness. I too was seeking, but I was not as clear in my seeking yet as Swamiji was when he first met Master. And so that meeting for me changed my life. Obviously the meeting between Swamiji and Master not only changed his life, it changed the life of all of us, because that was the point at which the divine ray came into what was going to develop into the work of Ananda around the world, with tens of thousands of people being touched and being uplifted by it. Shakespeare said, some people are born great, some people achieve greatness, and some people have greatness thrust upon them. I think Swamiji had all three of these. He was born great. He came into this life with an innate knowledge of spiritual teachings. He one time said that he was quite sure that he had achieved in a past life Sabikalpa Samadhi. And then, for whatever reasons the ego has, where the Sabikalpa Samadhi is the state of union with God, but after that experience, which has to be experienced with the life force withdrawn from the body, when the life force comes back into the body, then the ego is activated again. And for whatever the reason, Swamiji had an incarnation or two more to play out. I can look around the room and see the reason he needed to come, because he had such compassion. The trip across the country on a bus, he said there were two thoughts uppermost in his mind. The first was a desperate desire to know God. And the second, which really touches all of our lives, was the intense desire to share that knowledge with everyone. And how we share it. No writer that I have ever read so lucidly took deep spiritual truths and explained them. And Swamiji wrote so many books, he gave so many lectures. Master said that his particular three qualities were wisdom, love, and joy. And those qualities also were the qualities of Swamiji. And so that wisdom, love, and joy were expressed. Swamiji was always incredibly dynamic. I remember in the early years, I took what would now be called Level 1 meditation series with him. And at that time he also taught, first he would teach an hour of Hatha Yoga, and we have some Hatha Yoga graduates tonight. And then he taught, there's a little break for some food, and then he taught what was essentially Level 1. And so I took that course within a month or so after I first met him on that fateful day. And because it was the only way I could continue contact with him, I took it again, and then I took it yet a third time. Same course, same 6-week course. He probably thought, this fellow is a very slow learner. He has to take this material over and over again to get the gist of it. No, he could see that I was more than usually interested. But there grew in my heart an intense desire just to be in his aura. And in his early years, he was incredibly dynamic. Everything he did had such power and magnetism and energy behind it. Those of you who saw him in his later years saw an older man who kind of walked slowly and sometimes needed help to get upstairs and so on. That's just the way the body ages, but that's not the expression of the soul. In those early years, Swami would be, I was a little bit conservative, and Swami was anything but conservative. And so we would be walking down the streets of San Francisco, and he would have orange robes on and long hair, and he would be walking so fast I would carry a harmonium, and a suitcase full of books, because by this time I was helping him in his classes. So I had harmonium in one hand and a suitcase full of books and the other paraphernalia in the other. And I would be running in order to catch up to him, because it was like a ship moving through still water. People just parted, got out of his way, and he just moved along quickly in the streets of San Francisco. Everything he did was with intense concentration and energy, but it was also with deep, it's hard to even put my finger on the quality. It's kindness, it's caring, it's like everyone that he saw was his friend. And he cared deeply about his friends, and therefore there was no filter on the energy of his heart and of his soul. He just wanted to share, and he would answer questions, he would talk with people. It was just always doing something. Always there was the thread of him writing, because that was the dharma that he had. That's what Master told him. Your job in this life is to write, to edit, and to lecture. And so he was fulfilling that dharma. Always, always, he defined his life by discipleship to Master. And so that great thrust had at first a great deal of outward energy. When we started the community, he was so busy, he worked all the time. He was either working at the community, writing books, helping guide things, or he was off teaching in order to draw the funds that we needed in order to survive. And gradually, as we were able to take on more responsibility, then he pulled back a little from quite such an intense outward thrust, although he always lectured throughout his whole life. But by that time, we were able to handle administrative and functional details and building of houses. He didn't have to worry about that so much. So he could put his mind to writing, and great books came out. The New Path, The Path as it was called in the original edition, which told his story, and it is basically, there's some more room in here, people, which is basically a kind of a manual of discipleship. And that was really the way Swamiji defined his life, is as a disciple. By the end of his, so he was always talking either about Master or Master's teachings. So he was born great, but when he met Master, it wasn't as if he had greatness thrust upon him. Rather, I would say, the cork in the bottle of his own innate greatness was taken out by Master. And that was then able to expand and express itself, which until that time, the world around us does not willingly give up its delusion. And so he was a lone swimmer in a turbulent sea, and it took coming to Master to give the direction and clarity that his life work needed. And then he achieved greatness by the constant energy and effort, but more and more as he lived his life, the effort became effortless, because more and more we can all quote scripture or quote spiritual truths, but one of the great spiritual truths is that none of us do anything. God does everything. But to quote that and to live it are two different things. More and more as Swamiji's life went on, he began to really live the reality that he wasn't doing anything. God was doing everything through him. He always seemed to be in his later years, the eye of calmness at the center of a hurricane. So he would be sitting, looking harmless, looking kindly, not making too much of an effort, sitting in a chair, maybe editing. And he would have 7 or 8 people running in circles around, trying to accomplish this task and do that and do this and get this done. And always there was, I don't mean restless, I mean by this time he was so centered in himself that he didn't seem to move very much. But the whirlwind of his magnetism and his energy propelled not only the people immediately around him, but a vast crew. And I would say at the end of his life, he and Master, discipleship had by that time become so complete. He said, sometimes I don't know where Kriyananda leaves off and Yogananda begins. And so his discipleship by that time, the years and years and years of living with Master's teachings constantly in his mind, with Master's magnetism constantly propelling him, all those years so completely transformed him from the inside out that there was no more Kriyananda there. There was, just as there was no Yogananda there. Yogananda said, I killed Yogananda long ago. No one dwells in this temple now but God. And so there was no Kriyananda there. No one dwelled in that temple but God, and God in the form of Master. It was a joy to know him. It was a privilege to know him. And it was by far the greatest blessing of my life, and anything that I can do to help share what treasure I have been given, I willingly offer my life to that service.
Hello to our friends who are watching from Chennai and Bangalore, Noida, and Delhi, and other places in India. It's such a joy for us to be here on the anniversary of Swamiji's meeting Yoganandaji, our Guru, and especially significant for Jyotish and me, because now we have moved to India and we will live here for part of the year. So this is, you are all our brothers and sisters who are saying to us, welcome home, welcome home. And so we are so happy to be here with you, truly. Dianaji told us earlier today that some of you never met Swamiji, even though he lived here for a number of years. And yet here you are. She showed us pictures last night of the meetings that were held at the center to plan for our visit and different events. And there were dozens and dozens of people, many of you who were there helping to plan and helping to carry Swami's mission forward. And we are so grateful for all of this energy. Many years ago, we were having a nice banquet at our meditation retreat in California, and we were hosting another teacher from India, a spiritual teacher, and he was sitting next to Swamiji and they were speaking, and I was serving them, so I was putting the food on the table or taking away the dirty plates. And I heard Swami say to this other teacher, and he was saying it for our benefit, and I share it with you because it's true for all of you. He said, look at all these people. They never even knew Yoganandaji, and look how dedicated they are. That's because they were with him in the past. He has been their guru in many lifetimes, and that's why they are serving with such dedication. And this is true for all of you, all of us. Also with Swami, for those of you who never got to meet him, he is all of our teacher. He came, someone asked us when we were just in the Ananda community in Italy before coming here, And someone asked us a question at a satsang, was Swamiji an avatar? And I said, oh, he was more than that. He was one with his guru. And that's the most important thing of all. That's all he wanted to be. He didn't want a title. He didn't want to be put on a pedestal. He wanted to dissolve into the consciousness of his master. There's a beautiful story when Swamiji was helping Master when he was living at his desert retreat at 29 Palms in California. And Master was writing his commentaries on the Bhagavad Gita. And Swami was just sitting at his feet. And he said, I was so filled with gratitude and bliss to be at the feet of such a one as my Guru. And then Master moved to stand up, and Swamiji, who was a young man, 23, 24, 25, and he went to help Master, and he held his hand, helped him stand up, and Master looked him in the eye, and Swami was just thinking, how fortunate to be with such a great one. And Master just said, just a bulge on the ocean. Meaning, don't see me as anything separate. I'm just a part of that cosmic consciousness that is God. And over time, I understand a little more some of the gifts that Swami gave to us. Because when he would look at you and talk with you, he made, the first time I met him, he just said a few words to me, very insignificant. But I felt like he was looking right into my soul, as no one else had ever done. And yet, he never affirmed our reality as an individual ego. I don't know if I can explain the difference. But he made you feel that there was something of great value within you, that no one else maybe had ever known, that even your dearest friends and parents hadn't ever seen. And that what was of great value was your soul nature. But he didn't affirm you as an individual in the sense that you are special, you are different. And so it was such a beautiful way he had of drawing you forward spiritually. Because on the one hand, he affirmed the highest within you, and on the other hand, he obliterated the sense of individual importance. That was a great gift, because you could live in that freedom that I don't need to be anything. I don't care what the world thinks of me. It's totally unimportant. But there's a great gift within me, and that's God's presence. And that's all that's important. And in his simplicity of divine consciousness, Swami was able to awaken that in us. And then he said, how do you develop that? You meditate, you serve, you get in tune with your Guru, you do Kriya Yoga, and you will be able to live that way all the time. And so those of us who are with him, even for a little bit, he planted such a seed in our hearts. You know, later this year, we will have the great, all of us will have the great blessing of seeing the movie that is almost finished, called The Answer, about Swamiji's life. It's directed by a wonderful Indian director from Mumbai, Pavan Kaur. He wasn't a devotee. He had read Autobiography of a Yogi as a young man, but such was the karma that he was selected to make this movie. And Pavan, who has now become a very dear friend, and he first had a meeting with Swamiji where they were going to discuss the movie. Pavan said, he looked at me, and no one in my life had ever since had loved me in that way. And he said it was love at first sight. And Swami asked him, so like a child, he said, will you make this movie for me, Pavan? And Pavan said to him, anything that hands can do, anything that feet can move, anything that heart can feel, I will do this for you, Swamiji. This was his first time he met him. And so we were so happy to be here. About 2 years before he left the body, Swamiji asked Jyotish and I, will you come and live in India for half of the year? And we said, we will start arranging that, Swami. We will start changing what we do so we can do that. And again, in that same idea, it was not that he said, you are special, you are important, but he knew that we could share him with others, because our relationship with him was simple. It was often in total silence. It was service and devotion. And that's what we would love to share with all of you, the simplicity of that divine relationship of God helping God to become one